When Sarah, an elite Delta Force operative, is sent on a covert mission to track a suspected domestic terrorist cell operating inside a luxury gated community, she blends in as a morning jogger. But an overzealous HOA police unit, known for abusing their authority, tries to confront her with drawn weapons for loitering. The HOA security thought she was just another jogger trespassing on private property, so they drew their guns. But they didn't know she was on duty, armed, and operating under orders as a Delta Force combat officer tracking a real terrorist threat in the very neighborhood they swore to protect. They don't realize they've just interrupted a federal operation and pointed their guns at a trained warrior in the middle of a national security mission. As her identity unravels, the community is thrown into chaos, secrets are exposed, and the very people enforcing HOA rules become targets of a deeper, more dangerous conspiracy. Welcome to the HOA Discover channel. If you find out this story interesting, hit the like button, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Let's get back to the story. The sun had just started to rise, casting a golden hue over the manicured lawns and pristine streets of Maple Ridge Estates, a suburban utopia wrapped in layers of privilege, paranoia, and tightly enforced HOA policies. The gates were tall, the cameras numerous, and the residents proud of their so-called private security patrols, which were really nothing more than power-hungry weekend warriors with guns and badges issued by the HOA board. Into this world stepped Sarah Collins. She wore a light gray hoodie, black compression leggings, and a pair of scuffed running shoes that had seen their fair share of action, just not on suburban sidewalks. Her ponytail bounced as she jogged past trimmed hedges and decorative fountains. To anyone watching, she was just another fitness-obsessed wife trying to hit her morning step goal before the Starbucks line got too long. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Hidden beneath the synthetic layers of her jogger's outfit were a concealed comms mic, tactical ankle holster, and a thinly padded armor vest that could stop a 9mm round cold. Sarah wasn't on a fitness run. She was on an active Delta Force surveillance mission, deployed under direct orders from the Department of Defense to monitor a possible domestic terrorist embedded in suburbia. House 1172, according to decrypted intelligence, had recently received illegal international wire transfers, chemical shipment alerts, and encrypted digital traffic linked to a known extremist network. The suspect, a former Army EOD specialist with a dishonorable discharge and a grudge. Sarah had been casing the house for 2 days. Every movement was being logged, who left, who entered, what packages arrived, even the rhythm of the lawn sprinklers. This morning, she was closing in. The timing had to be perfect. As she rounded a cul-de-sac, her sharp eyes scanned the suspect's residence from a distance. Curtains still drawn. No signs of motion. Quiet. Too quiet. She instinctively tapped her comm once, silent code for no visual, continuing recon. Then came the flash of headlights behind her. A white Ford Explorer, marked with a cheap decal reading Maple Ridge Security Unit, swerved beside her and slammed on its brakes. 2 men stepped out, one older, overweight, wearing tactical sunglasses far too large for his face, the other younger but clearly tense. Both had their hands on their weapons. "Hey! Stop right there! You don't belong here!" the older one barked, one hand now resting fully on his sidearm. Sarah slowed her jog and removed one AirPod from her ear. "Excuse me. You're trespassing," the younger one snapped. "Residents only. This is a private community." Sarah tilted her head slightly. "I'm jogging. Is that a crime?" The older one stepped closer. "Let's see some ID. And put your hands where I can see them." Sarah's calm demeanor didn't waver. She weighed her options. She had no obligation to reveal her identity, but escalating now could blow the operation. Still, the younger guard was unholstering his weapon. Her voice dropped an octave. "You really want to go down this road? I advise you to stand down. Right now." They didn't listen. The younger one raised his pistol, not pointing it directly but close enough to send the message. "Ma'am, I said hands up." Sarah moved so fast the guards didn't have time to process it. In a single motion, she twisted the barrel of the younger man's weapon downward, disarmed him with surgical precision, and had him on one knee with his own gun aimed at his chest. all in under 5 seconds. The older man froze. What the hell? Who are you? Sarah reached into her vest pocket and pulled out a black ID wallet, flipping it open to reveal a Delta Force Federal Operations badge, glowing under the rising sun. Her eyes narrowed. I'm the one keeping this neighborhood from getting blown sky high. And you two just compromised a federal mission. Silence. Both guards stood stunned, trying to compute what had just happened. From behind a curtain across the street, a resident peeked through, smartphone in hand. Sarah looked around calmly and muttered into her comm. Situation compromised. HOA security engaged. Going tactical. And just like that, the quiet of Maple Ridge Estates was shattered. The silence was heavy, thick with tension and disbelief. Sarah held her stance with precision, one knee bent, her right hand firmly gripping the HOA officer's wrist as his own sidearm now pointed at his chest. Her breathing was calm, controlled. The younger officer's eyes darted wildly, unsure whether to call for help or scream for mercy. The older security officer took a cautious step forward, fingers hovering near the grip of his Glock. Ma'am, I don't know who you think you are, but that's assaulting a licensed patrolman. You're in a lot of trouble. Sarah's head slowly turned in his direction, her glare sharp enough to cut concrete. You drew a weapon on an American military officer operating under federal authority. The only one in trouble here is you. The younger guard was sweating now, gulping air in short, panicked bursts. She moved like some kind of ninja, he stammered. She took my gun like it was nothing. Delta Force, Sarah repeated coldly, flipping open the ID wallet in one hand while still holding his weapon in the other. The badge gleamed in the morning light, black and gold with the unmistakable emblem of the elite. Authorization code, Bravo 96 Echo. Engaged in live operation. You just interfered with a classified military mission. The older guard hesitated. His bluster was fading quickly, but years of HOA power trips made him stubborn. I still need to verify. Sarah cut him off. Do it. Call your supervisor. Call the board. Hell, call Homeland Security. You think that badge is fake? Try me. Behind them, 3 more patrol SUVs arrived, tires screeching to a halt on the pristine pavement. Doors flew open. Radios crackled. 2 more armed men stepped out, fingers twitching near their holsters. One barked through a megaphone, "Drop the weapon and step away from the officer." Sarah rolled her eyes. You've got to be kidding me. A small crowd had begun to form. Curious residents in robes and coffee mugs stood on their driveways, some already filming with their phones. One older woman whispered, "That's the jogger I see every morning. What's happening?" Sarah stood up slowly, still holding the disarmed weapon. She ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and placed the firearm on the pavement beside her. Then she raised both hands and said loud enough for the cameras to hear, "I am Sergeant First Class Sarah Collins, Delta Force, United States Army, on active federal orders. You have just unlawfully aimed weapons at a live military operation. I suggest you holster up and back off before you trigger an incident that will bring federal agents to every doorstep in this neighborhood." The silence that followed was deafening. The HOA backup guards exchanged uncertain glances. One lowered his weapon first. Then the others followed, nervously stepping back. The older officer's face went pale. We didn't know." Sarah stepped toward him, calm and unshaken. "Because you didn't ask. You saw a woman in running clothes and assumed she didn't belong. You thought you were protecting this neighborhood. Instead, you compromised national security and nearly got one of your own men killed." A man in a bathrobe standing nearby shouted, "This is insane. What is going on?" Sarah didn't respond to him. She reached to her earpiece. "Command, I'm blown. Local interference. Civilian units now aware of presence. Mission must be recalibrated." A voice crackled in her ear. "Acknowledged. Proceed to fallback position Bravo. Support en route." She turned to the crowd, then to the HOA guards, her voice sharp and commanding. This area is now under federal surveillance. You'll receive a visit from military intelligence within the hour. Don't leave. Don't lie. And don't touch anything. And with that, she walked calmly past the stunned officers, vanishing down the street as the neighborhood stared in stunned silence. They had pulled a gun on the wrong woman. And now the entire community was about to learn the price of their mistake. In a dimly lit room far from the chaos of Maple Ridge Estates, Tom Collins stared at 6 surveillance screens glowing on his wall-mounted monitor grid. His jaw was tight, his fingers poised over a keyboard, replaying the incident from Sarah's bodycam on loop, frame by frame. From his home office, Tom wasn't just a husband watching his wife on a morning jog. He was a tactical analyst and tech lead for Delta Force Support Command, tasked with managing intel flow, camera feeds, and encrypted drone surveillance for Sarah's field mission. But right now, his wife, his partner in life and war, had nearly been shot over nothing more than a jogging hoodie and HOA paranoia. He gritted his teeth as the footage paused on the frame where the HOA guard drew his weapon. She gave them 2 warnings, he muttered aloud. 2 warnings. Idiots. But the mission couldn't stop now. Not when they were this close. Tom flipped to the heat map overlay of the neighborhood. A red pulse blinked slowly at House 1172, a 2-story colonial with an overgrown side garden and a minivan that hadn't moved in weeks. To everyone else, it was just a forgotten corner of the community. But to military intelligence, it was the center of a disturbing digital trail. The target inside that house was Marcus Dean, a former Marine Explosive Ordnance Disposal (EOD) technician. He served 3 tours overseas, saw friends blown apart by roadside bombs, and returned home a changed man. Dishonorably discharged for violent insubordination and diagnosed with severe PTSD, Marcus had gone dark 2 years ago. That is, until 6 weeks ago, when he resurfaced in encrypted extremist forums. Then came wire transfers from overseas. Then shipments of nitrogen fertilizer, pressure cookers, remote detonators, ingredients that didn't belong in any suburb, let alone one with weekly potlucks and yoga classes. The mission was simple in theory. Observe, confirm, and contain. Sarah had been embedded in Maple Ridge for 4 days under deep cover. She had mapped Marcus' schedule, tracked power usage, monitored trash pickups for traces of chemical residue, and intercepted every Wi-Fi signal coming out of the house. The pieces were lining up. Until this morning, when overzealous HOA rent-a-cops shattered the operation. Now Marcus might know something was wrong. Tom switched feeds again, opening drone footage of the house. The thermal overlay showed increased activity in the garage, heat signatures near what looked like metal cylinders. Another screen lit up with keywords from a hacked tablet inside Marcus' home. Words like evacuation, deadline moved up, gala attack confirmed. Tom's eyes widened. Damn it. He slammed the keyboard and opened a direct encrypted comm to Sarah's field headset. Sarah, you're not gonna like this. He's moving up the timeline. Her voice crackled in. Define moving up. He's prepping now. Heat signatures show motion near the tanks. He's going active. Possibly today. What about the target site? Tom inhaled sharply. It's the HOA Gala. It's the only public event with 200+ residents in one place. Tonight. That's the hit. There was a pause. Then Sarah said, "Tell Bravo team to mobilize. And prep the drone strike as a last resort." You sure? If he's planning to blow up an HOA event with civilians, we don't wait. Tom nodded silently. His screen showed Sarah rounding the corner of a house, disappearing into a patch of shadows. She was switching modes now, no longer surveilling. Now she was hunting. Because the real mission was no longer about observation, it was about stopping a bomb before it turned Maple Ridge into the next front-page tragedy. And thanks to a couple of reckless HOA guards, they just lost the element of surprise. By noon, Maple Ridge Estates was a pressure cooker. The incident involving Sarah Collins, the unarmed jogger who turned out to be a Delta Force operator, had already exploded online. Within hours of the confrontation, someone had uploaded a shaky cell phone video of the takedown, complete with audio of the HOA guard shouting and the moment Sarah flipped the officer's gun back on him. The caption read, "Jogger destroys HOA security. Turns out she's special forces." And within an hour, it was viral. Residents couldn't stop whispering. The once pristine, rule-bound paradise now felt like a powder keg. Mothers clutched their children closer. Joggers changed their routes. Neighborhood watch chats buzzed with panic, confusion, and conspiracy. Inside the HOA clubhouse, the board was unraveling. Chairman Douglas Fielding, a balding man in his early 60s known for his obsession with order and decorum, stood at the head of a long mahogany table, red-faced and sweaty. "We are not at fault," he barked. "This was a misunderstanding. An overreaction by our patrol." "She was a federal officer," snapped board member Linda Reyes, slamming her hand on the table. "And you let those glorified mall cops point loaded weapons at her. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen." Douglas tried to regain control. "We've issued a formal apology to, Mrs. Collins." Linda's eyes blazed. "Her name is Sergeant First Class Collins, and she was on an anti-terror mission. She could have died because of our security detail." Then came the final blow. Sarah's body cam footage was released, officially, through military channels. In it, you could hear everything. The threats, the profiling, the arrogance. It was damning. Worse than anyone had expected. The footage revealed not only the confrontation, but dozens of clips over the past few days showing other HOA patrol officers harassing minority joggers, stopping teens riding bikes without helmets, and even detaining a delivery driver for looking suspicious. By evening, a group of furious residents had gathered in the cul-de-sac outside the HOA office. Someone brought a bullhorn. Others carried signs. "Our streets, not their rules. End the patrols. Who are you protecting?" Local news vans pulled up, hungry for the story. Reporters swarmed the area. Microphones were shoved into faces. One woman wept on camera. "I've lived here 10 years. I never thought I'd have to worry about my kids getting a gun pointed at them for riding scooters." Sarah, now in full uniform, stepped onto the makeshift podium. Her eyes scanned the crowd, neighbors who once looked at her with polite indifference, now staring with awe, fear, and admiration. She raised a tablet in one hand. "This," she said firmly, "is the full recording of my encounter with Maple Ridge Patrol. But it's also a record of a pattern, of harassment, overreach, and reckless behavior that goes beyond just me." The crowd murmured. Phones were raised. People started live streaming. Sarah continued. "You gave power to people untrained in de-escalation. You armed them with firearms, not accountability. And now you've endangered lives, not just mine, but your own." One HOA board member, shaken and pale, tried to interrupt. "This isn't the place." But Sarah held up a second document. "This is a federal report detailing the abuse of HOA security in this neighborhood over the last 18 months. I have authorization to release it." Gasps filled the air. Then the real reckoning began. An unmarked black SUV rolled up to the curb. Two agents from the Department of Homeland Security stepped out. Their suits were crisp, their faces unreadable. They walked directly to the main security guard, the same man who had pulled the gun on Sarah that morning, and handed him a warrant. "You are under federal arrest for obstruction of a military operation and unlawful use of force," one agent said. "You have the right to remain silent." The neighborhood fell into stunned silence. The guard was cuffed and led away, while cell phones captured every second. Inside the clubhouse, Chairman Fielding collapsed into a chair, defeated. Outside, the crowd cheered, not for vengeance, but for justice. The HOA, once feared and untouchable, had been exposed. And now, everything was changing. The sun dipped low behind the red-tiled roofs of Maple Ridge, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns and glistening fountains. The neighborhood looked peaceful, idyllic, even. But inside House 1172, the truth was anything but. Sarah Collins moved through the house like a shadow. Delta Force quiet, weapon drawn, night vision HUD scanning every room. The front door had been unlocked, which meant one thing: Marcus Dean was gone. She stepped carefully over the threshold into the garage. That's where she found the first clue. A workbench cluttered with bomb-making components, steel piping, pressure cookers, black powder residue, and, most disturbing of all, an open duffel bag with a catering uniform neatly folded inside. Sarah's pulse quickened. She activated her comms. Tango has exfiltrated. Garage shows signs of IED prep. He's left with equipment. Repeat. He's mobile and in disguise. Tom's voice came through, calm but tight. Confirmed. Drone saw a white van leaving 23 minutes ago. Commercial decals, Sunset Catering Services. Matches a vendor booked for tonight's HOA gala. Damn it, she muttered. We thought we had time. She scanned the wall above the workbench and froze. Tacked there, in meticulous order, was a blueprint of the Maple Ridge Community Hall. Every hallway, loading dock, HVAC duct, and ballroom entry was marked in red pen. At the bottom, in bold capital letters, a chilling phrase. Operation. Cull the Shadows, 2,100 hours. Sarah checked her watch. 1913. Less than 2 hours until the planned detonation. Suddenly, the floor creaked behind her. She spun around, weapon raised. But it was Tom, now suited up in black tactical gear, having slipped in quietly through the side door. You're supposed to be at the ops van, she said, lowering her weapon. Tom didn't waste time. I had to see this for myself. He scanned the room. Jesus. He's not just ex-military. He's militant. This isn't revenge, this is calculated. Sarah nodded. He's radicalized. Probably thinks he's serving justice. Taking down the corrupt elite, what better place to start than a neighborhood ruled by a power-hungry HOA? They moved quickly, grabbing evidence, snapping photos, loading gear. Then Sarah found something that made her stomach sink. A phone. Unlocked. Open to a live streaming app. Scheduled for 2,100 hours. Oh no, she whispered. He's planning to broadcast the attack. Tom grabbed it, checking the settings. Connected to a GoPro. Probably strapped to his chest. Sarah's voice turned cold. He wants to die on camera. Make a statement. Inspire others. No, Tom said. We're not letting that happen. They bolted from the house and into a blacked-out Delta SUV waiting outside. The street was eerily quiet, just sprinklers humming and porch lights flickering on. But Sarah could feel it in her bones. Something terrible was coming. Inside the gala hall, guests had begun arriving. Tuxedos, champagne flutes, string quartets. No one suspected a thing. They chatted about property values, garden club elections, and landscaping ordinances, blissfully unaware that a bomb might be ticking in the same room. Sarah's earpiece buzzed. Bravo team in position. No visual on target. Catering staff screened. One unaccounted for. Then came a voice from inside the building. Delta operative, Hawk 6. Ma'am, we've got a man near the main table. Catering badge. No face match. He's sweating through his gloves. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Stand by. Do not engage, she ordered. I'm going in. The SUV screeched to a stop in front of the gala. Sarah burst out, blending in with the arriving guests, her gown already on beneath her tactical vest. She passed the security checkpoint, nodded to a fellow agent disguised as a waiter, and slipped through the kitchen doors. And there, by the champagne table, was Marcus Dean, wearing a white apron, gloves, chest slightly puffed, eyes scanning like a predator. A small, blinking red light glowed beneath his coat. He was wearing the bomb. Sarah's hand moved to her sidearm beneath the silk wrap. Her voice whispered through her mic. Visual confirmed. Target is live. Bomb is on body. We do this clean, no panic. We stop him, now. The Maple Ridge HOA gala was in full swing. The chandeliers above the community center ballroom cast golden light across a sea of tailored tuxedos, flowing gowns, and meticulously arranged centerpieces. A string quartet played Vivaldi near the open bar, and the HOA board members paraded around like royalty, basking in suburban glory. Chairman Douglas Fielding stood near the podium, adjusting his red tie and preparing for his keynote speech, blissfully unaware he was about to become the centerpiece of a domestic terror attack. But among the guests, drifting like a ghost in high heels and a floor-length navy gown, Sergeant First Class Sarah Collins moved with deadly precision. Behind her elegant facade was a Delta Force operator armed with a thigh-holstered pistol, a ceramic tactical blade in her left sleeve, and an encrypted earpiece linked to 5 covert agents posted around the perimeter. The voice in her ear was tight. Target holding pattern near East Buffet. Blinking red beneath jacket confirmed. She zeroed in. Marcus Dean stood near the shrimp cocktail, holding a tray with 2 champagne flutes. His catering uniform was spotless, but sweat pooled at his temples, and his left eye twitched with barely restrained rage. He wasn't looking at the guests. He was scanning for exits. Scanning for Fielding. Then he moved, purposeful, calm, heading straight for the stage. Sarah's body tensed. Bravo team, lock doors. Charlie, prep jammers. Everyone else, eyes on my 6. She weaved through the crowd, inching closer. Her eyes tracked the blinking LED under Marcus's vest. A heartbeat bomb, wired to a pulse monitor and deadman switch. If he was taken down too fast, the vest would go off. Too slow. He'd detonate manually. The music swelled. Fielding stepped toward the mic. And Marcus lunged. Fielding. Sarah shouted. Down. The chairman froze, confused, then Marcus shoved through the crowd, tray crashing to the floor. Sarah sprinted. Guests screamed. Glass shattered. Someone knocked over a table. Sarah leapt over a chair and collided with Marcus mid-charge, both of them tumbling to the floor in front of the podium. His vest lit up. Red. He punched. She ducked. He slammed an elbow at her head. She deflected, twisting his arm behind his back. The ballroom turned into chaos. Screams echoed as guests ran for exits. But the doors were sealed, per Sarah's earlier orders. No one in. No one out. Marcus roared, using his raw strength to throw her off. He scrambled toward the stage, reaching under his apron for the trigger, until Sarah launched her blade, striking his arm and knocking the detonator from his hand. It skittered across the polished floor. Marcus howled in pain, spinning back toward her. She tackled him again, this time pinning him with her knees as she slammed a pressure point on his neck, causing his muscles to spasm. Her hand moved lightning fast, reaching into his vest, disarming one wire, then the next. 15 seconds. Tom's voice came in. If that bomb goes dark, it might auto-trigger. Not if I rewrite the kill signal, Sarah hissed, fingers flying over the manual override. She cut the red wire. Then the green. 3 rapid beeps. Her heart stopped. Beep. Beep. Silence. Then the LED turned from red to blue. Disarmed. Sarah exhaled hard, sweat dripping from her brow as Marcus went limp beneath her, knocked out cold. Bravo team stormed in, securing the room and taking Marcus into custody. The guests were ushered out under heavy protection, many still trembling and barefoot from fleeing in panic. Chairman Fielding sat slumped behind the podium, pale as a ghost. "You okay?" Sarah asked, standing tall in her half-torn gown, blood on her knuckles. He nodded slowly. "You saved my life." She didn't smile. "Yeah," she said. "And next time, maybe screen your catering staff better." The following morning, Maple Ridge Estates was no longer the pristine sanctuary of picket fences and rulebooks. It was a national scandal. News helicopters hovered above the rooftops. Satellite vans lined the sidewalks. Journalists with microphones waited at every gate, broadcasting live feeds with bold headlines scrolling across the screen. HOA terror plot foiled by Delta Force officer. Gala nearly ends in tragedy. Secret security state in suburban paradise. Leaked bodycam footage shocks nation. Military hero saves HOA from domestic attack. Board resigns amid scandal. Inside her modest home on Birch Lane, Sarah Collins stood in her kitchen, staring at the TV. Her face, captured in a frame of raw power, mid-tackle with Marcus Dean, was now viral. She hadn't wanted this. She was supposed to be a ghost. Delta Force didn't do press. But there was no hiding anymore. Her identity had been leaked within hours. A reporter outside was already calling her America's real-life Wonder Woman. Another described her as the warrior mom who took down a bomb threat in heels. But the truth was far more complicated. On the HOA forums, chaos erupted. Thousands of residents, once silent or apathetic, now flooded message boards with outrage and grief. Stories poured out. Harassment, threats, excessive fines, racial profiling. All of it. Everything Sarah had suspected for years. Someone posted the entire footage from her bodycam, time-stamped and unedited. The HOA's private patrol was exposed, militarized, unchecked, and brutal. By noon, Chairman Douglas Fielding and the entire board had resigned. In a tearful statement streamed live on the HOA's internal site, Fielding stammered, "We thought we were protecting our community. We were wrong. We let power replace wisdom." Residents weren't interested in apologies. A petition circulated demanding the immediate dismantling of Maple Ridge's private security force. Within 24 hours, it had 12,000 signatures, more than double the neighborhood population. That night, Sarah met with Tom in the shadowed park behind her house. They sat on a bench, quiet, no uniforms, just two tired warriors beneath the stars. "It's over," Tom said. "Is it?" she replied. He looked at her. Sarah held up a flash drive. "This has everything. Dean's manifesto, board communications, drone footage, illegal surveillance logs. They had cameras in places no HOA should ever touch." Tom frowned. "You're going to release it?" "Not me," she said. "The truth doesn't belong to one person." The next morning, anonymous encrypted files flooded the inboxes of local reporters, civil liberties organizations, and federal oversight offices. A full internal exposé, how a suburban HOA had turned into a soft dictatorship, backed by armed men and unchecked authority. The fallout was swift. Lawsuits were filed. Federal audits launched. Homeland Security declared the HOA patrol force a case study in private overreach. Several members of the board were subpoenaed. Meanwhile, Sarah declined every interview. She didn't need the limelight. Her work was done. She and Tom left quietly at dusk, their car slipping past the gates one last time. No fanfare. No goodbyes. Just a woman, a soldier, and a survivor choosing peace over revenge. As they drove out, a new sign was being erected near the front entrance of the neighborhood. "Welcome to Maple Ridge, a community rebuilt." Below it, in smaller letters, "No armed patrols. No hidden surveillance. Just neighbors." Sarah smiled for the first time in days. Sometimes, justice didn't wear a badge or carry a fine. Sometimes, it wore combat boots, a sharp mind, and a mother's resolve. And sometimes, it jogged quietly through the streets, unbothered and unafraid. 6 months later, the sun rose gently over a very different Maple Ridge. The fences were still white. The lawns still green. But something had changed in the air, a sense of real community, not fear disguised as order. The armed HOA patrols were gone. The security gates now stood open in the daylight, replaced with a neighborhood watch run by volunteers. People spoke to each other, shared coffee, mowed lawns for elderly neighbors. Where there was once paranoia, now there was pride. The former community hall, once the target of a domestic terror plot, had been transformed into a veterans outreach center. Sarah's idea. Free therapy. Legal aid. housing help, a tribute to Marcus Dean's tragedy, and a promise that no one else would be abandoned again. Inside the quiet center, Sarah Collins pinned a photo to the memory wall. It was of her in uniform, not for glory, for reminder. Below it, she scrawled a quote in permanent marker. Power doesn't protect people. People protect people. Tom stood beside her, no longer in Delta fatigues. He was teaching self-defense at a local gym now. Still fierce, still watching over her. Still family in every way that mattered. As they stepped outside into the warm breeze, a group of kids ran by, chasing a drone toy through the street. No fear. Just laughter. Sarah looked out across the neighborhood and saw mothers pushing strollers. Retirees sitting on porches. No one harassed. No one stalked. No Karen with a clipboard in sight. This wasn't the same HOA that pulled a gun on her. This was something reborn. And for the first time in years, she didn't need to run with eyes on her back. She jogged for peace. Not to scan for threats, but to feel the air in her lungs and the freedom she fought for. The world would move on. The headlines would fade. But in one corner of the country, a battle had been fought, and won. Not by bullets. Not by bombs. But by courage. By exposure. And by a woman who refused to be intimidated by a badge that didn't earn its power. Sarah Collins didn't need to be known as a hero. She just needed the world to know. Never underestimate a quiet woman, especially when she's Delta Force.